Good evening. I'm Stanley Pacion, and this will represent my third reading of an article previously published on Nero, on Nero's court, on Rome during the 2nd century A.D., the 2nd century of the Common Era, and just the way he lived as accounted by Suetonius. I ended the last discussion with Nero's examining his mother's corpse, handling her legs and arms critically, and between drinks, discussing their good and bad points. But Suetonius goes on to say that sadism animated all of Nero's love relations with women. He murdered his favorite aunt by ordering her doctors to give her a laxative of fatal strength. He treated his first wife so badly he even tried to strangle her on a number of occasions that a few of his friends mustered enough courage to criticize him. Though he doted on his second wife, he kicked her to death while she was pregnant because she dared complain that he had come home late from the races. Again, Suetonius' account reads loud and clear. Once the way to sexuality becomes unbridled, the end result invariably becomes one of awful violence. In the next part of this article, I've entitled The Wages of Unbridled Lust. Nero not only brutally abused the marriage and familial institution, using it as a means to meet the demands of his ever-mounting lust, he also openly and deliberately mocked it. Nero's love for his freedman, Dorforios, the boy Sporus, and a host of other male friends always involved a mock marriage. The holiest of Roman institutions was his plaything, an instrument which he employed to heighten erotic stimulation. Suetonius works a dark theme. Sex had undermined all social values. Motherhood, marriage, the family, every principle guaranteed by the sacred hearth fell to sadistic lust. The unchecked sexual instinct had reduced Roman society to a horrible travesty of its former self. Nero's debauchery had the effect throughout the empire. Lust, not right, became the standard in judicial procedure. Felons of all sorts would gain executive clemency from Nero if they confessed to sexual excess. This is a quotation now. He was convinced that nobody could remain sexually chaste, but that most people concealed their secret vices. Hence, if anyone confessed to obscene practices, Nero forgave him all his other crimes. Like all other things he touched, Nero also perverted the once proud legal code of the Roman state. Sex also dictated the empire's economic policies. During the early years of his reign, Nero actually fattened the treasury. His later years showed incredible profligacy. Excess in sexuality, Suetonius suggests, made for excess in spending, especially in the building of pleasure palaces. The vast fortunes that Nero expanded in creating palaces of sensual delight were fantastic, forcing him in the end to bankruptcy. Suetonius gives a good account of some of these projects. And here's a quotation again. He built a palace stretching from the Palatine to the Esquiline Hill, which he called the Passageway, and when it burned down soon afterwards, rebuilt it under the new name, the Golden House. The following details will give us some notion of its size and magnificence. A huge statue of himself, 120 feet high, stood at the entrance hall, and the pillared arcade ran for a whole mile. An enormous pool, more like a sea than a pool, was surrounded by buildings made to resemble cities, and by a landscape garden consisting of plowed fields, vineyards, pastures, and woodlands, where every variety of domestic and wild animal roamed about. Parts of the house were overlaid with gold and studded with precious stones. All of the dining rooms had ceilings of fretted ivory, and the panels, which could slide back and let a rain of flowers or a perfume from hidden sprinklers shower upon his guests. The main dining room was circular, and its roof revolved slowly, day and night, in time with the sky. Seawater, or sulfur water, was always on tap in the baths. When the palace had been decorated throughout in this lavish style, Nero dedicated it, and condescended to remark, good. Now at least I can begin to live like a human being. The bankruptcy of the economy signaled a moral bankruptcy of the state. To obtain additional funds, he needed to complete his architectural projects. He resorted to extortion, robbery, and blackmail. In committing these crimes, his private bestiality grew into a public affair. Among his many atrocities was a wholesale massacre of the nobility and finally the burning of Rome, crimes from which he profited. Addiction, in this case sex addiction, leads to crime. And the greater the addiction, the greater the crimes that need to satiate its ever-mounting demands. I will continue with the final part, part 4, shortly. Thank you very much. Good evening.